Hi, and welcome to another episode of Garmology, a podcast about clothes and stuff. Now, today, my guest is someone you might recognize from your telly. It's Ben. Ben, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, yes, my name is Ben Fogle, and you're probably used to seeing me traveling the world or maybe on some expedition in a faraway place. But today I am in my man cave, and we're going to chat about outerwear, which is one of my secret passions, or not so secret now.
And I can tell from your backdrop there that you are quite passionate about stuff. And also, if I'm not very much mistaken, because I've also prepared a slight little backdrop here with a couple of items, you've got one exactly the same as me hanging over your left ear.
I think I've got the iconic Caborn Everest parka. And actually, I can see that I think that's a Mallory that you've got hanging up as well.
No, it's not, but we'll get there because this is actually very much expedition related. We'll get there. I picked it out special for you.
Very good.
I'm good like that. Now, Ben, obviously known for your expeditions and going off on telly, far off places, meeting people. If we go back in time, what brought you to where you are today?
It's sort of all happened by accident. I sometimes describe myself as an accidental adventurer. I had a kind of I did not have an outdoorsy childhood, put it that way. I grew up in central London. My father is a practicing veterinary surgeon. My mother was an actress, and I literally grew up opposite Marble Arch in central London. So the outdoors came into my world each summer. Dad is Canadian, so I spent some incredible summers out in the wilds of eastern Canada, but the rest of the time was very urban. So the fact that I ended up working in the outdoors, in the world of adventure and traveling, really was sort of accidental. So I think the way I ended up doing what I do was a series of tipping points, I suppose, and I think there were two big things that happened that were instrumental. One was when I was 18, I went off traveling. I went off to Central and South America for the best part of 2 years,
Gosh.
and it was life-changing. I absolutely loved every second of it, and it's when I became a passionate traveler, I suppose, fascinated by people, and I learnt the language. And I think I realized then that I wanted a life of travel in some shape or form, not necessarily the scale of some of the adventures I've done subsequently. But then the next big tipping point happened in 1999. I was in my mid-20s, had just graduated from university, and I applied for what would later become the very first reality show on British television. It was called Castaway, and the BBC were looking to send a group of volunteers to be marooned on a Scottish island for a year. And I applied, and the rest, as they say, Nick, is history.
So up to that point, had you sort of been to the Scottish Isles and the climate there and needed to dress appropriately?
I had spent a little bit of time. I had gone up to the Isle of Egg when I was about 8 years old, and I remember the weather well. Huge storms, rain. So when it came to packing for what would be the Isle of Tarrantay, that was the island that we were marooned on for the BBC project Castaway, we were each given one big packing crate, and we had to have all our possessions for a whole year in it. So it was the first time I had to really think about the equipment and the type of clothing that I would need, and I put a lot of work into it. It was probably quite old school, as in I went for kind of waxed jackets, the Barbour, a pair of neoprene wellies, but I also made sure that I took lots of fleeces, lots and lots of lighter weight waterproofs. But I do remember really enjoying the process of getting all of my equipment ready, and it was probably the first time, and certainly not the last, that I kind of really got involved in packing for what was essentially an expedition, I suppose.
So it sounds like you had a variety of modern, new, heavy, light. During that year, did you sort of find out what worked best or not?
Well, I tell you, my favourite thing that I took was a classic Guernsey, thick, thick wool jumper, and I have to say, it was an amazing piece of kit. I think it was the first time I realised the importance of natural fabrics. I had waxed jackets in terms of Barbours, but I think I really realised the power of kind of old school kit when I was there.
And we're talking the traditional, really itchy, solid British wool. You
Mhm.
can also scrub saucepans with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Very scratchy. Can almost stand up rigid when you're not wearing it. But I really I like the aesthetic of it. I think it was the first time. I think I never really cared about fashion when I was younger. I didn't wear a pair of jeans until I was, I know, probably into my 20s. It never really occurred to me to care about what I wore. I wore dad's hand-me-downs, lots and lots of Canadian kind of lumberjack shirts and things. Um, but I think it was maybe when I was on that island for a year, particularly on television, and there were photographs being taken, I started just becoming a little bit more self-aware of what kind of suited me, what looked nice, as well as being practical. For me, the most important and the kind of clothing that I like to get is practical wear, stuff that's functional, not just I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I spent I spent a long period working as a picture editor for Tatler magazine, doing fashion shoots, and kind of I was one floor below GQ, so I saw all the kind of high fashion, and I peeked behind the curtain. I didn't really like what I saw, and it's never really appealed to me. And I think as the years have moved on, I love the combination of functionality, practicality, but also aesthetic thrown in there.
Mm. And this also gave you the love of the solid Barbours, I imagine.
Yeah, and I'd say the Barbour. Am I allowed to show you an example
Oh, yeah,
quickly now?
yep, sure.
Yeah. So this is one that I've had for a long time. Can you
That
do you know which one this is?
looks like it's is it the Stockman smock?
The longshoreman, this one
Longshoreman's
actually.
smock, yeah.
So it's yeah.
A really
So
raggedy, smelly
this
old one.
oh my gosh, and the smell is amazing. Every time I wear it, people say I need to get it re-waxed, but I love the patina on it.
You can't re-wax it.
Anyway,
It
it's
destroys
not
it.
all about aesthetic, but this one I've had for a very long time, and for me, a wax jacket, I love the smell of it. It's heavy, and compared to some jackets that you can get now, it's a bit of a dinosaur. But I think it's the classic example of a combination of aesthetic, heritage, functionality, all the things that I look for. So, yes, certainly on that island experiment on the Castaway project, I wore Barbours a lot. I suppose I was almost playing as being a bit of a farmer, an outdoorsman for the first time, and I think it kind of I had I forget the name of it, the kind of Viella shirt, with the little crosses
Uh-huh.
that lots of farmer folk wear, or people who are pretending to be farmers. So I kind of did almost play dress up in some ways, because I wanted to play the part, but I also kind of, recognize the functionality that those items of clothing had.
Well, I think a lot of us are playing dress up in exactly the same sort of way, trying to appropriate not necessarily the farmer style, but the sort of rugged, real, solid, dependable. I mean, there's all these sort of properties and values associated with sort of proper clothing.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think people are really realizing now, that actually a lot of that, what we might call old school materials, old school designs, have stood the test of time for a reason. There is a reason that Barbours, that many of those old school jackets, and to look at some of the examples behind you, Nigel Caborn, who has based a lot of his workwear on some of the most classic, beautiful, functional designs ever made, like the Karakoram. You can see just over there, over my right shoulder, that dates back quite a long way. And every season you'll see almost every outdoor brand tries to bring out their own version of it. I don't think anyone's kind of made it quite as well as that original Eddie Bauer, but I think it proves that certain design stands the test of time, not just because of the aesthetic, but also because of the pure functionality of it.
Yeah. It's also a case that it's very hard to come up with new stuff. Everyone just dives into their vintage archives and vintage photos, and wow, didn't the guys look good back then? And let's try it again now.
And one wonders, will people in 50 years, well, less, maybe in 30 years, be looking back at people wearing new North Face or Arc'teryx or Mammoth and think, wow, they looked great? And that's an open-ended question. I don't know whether they will think that actually the designs of 2025 are as iconic as we think some of those designs from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. When I look through all those great old menswear books at some of the great collections people have, I just marvel at the simplicity of some of those early designs, and it's certainly the look that I like.
I mean, you just have to look at a Solway zipper Barbour, say from 1970. That's already stood the test of time for 55 years. I mean, last year's Arc'teryx or North Face is already last year's fashion. So I don't know if they're going to stand the test of time.
Yeah, I mean, I almost describe kind of modern outdoor wear as being fast fashion, even when it's not fast fashion in this notion of made overnight for a very cheap cost. It's more that these seasons, the turnover of seasons is so fast now. For me, an outdoor jacket should be a timeless piece that can be worn throughout any season. I have no seasonality when it comes to my wardrobe. I'm not going to take you up to actually see inside my wardrobe, but it's filled with about 30 pairs of shorts, and that's it. And that lasts me for the whole year. There's about 2 months when I usually end up throwing on a pair of jeans or trousers, but the rest of the time is shorts. And it's really interesting because my wife packs all her summer dresses away at the end of the season and puts them all into moth-proof bags and under the bed and gets out her winter woolies and things. Well, for me, my winter, a pair of shorts and a thick wool jumper is pretty much what's going to get, and a sensible jacket is what's going to get me through my entire year, because I obviously travel a lot. I'm constantly in different environments, different seasons, but there is no kind of seasonality when it comes to my wardrobe. And I think jackets kind of are the same. I prefer a jacket that can be worn in summer and winter, believe it or not. Not that I'm going to wear, of course there are exceptions to the rule, the really big down jackets. I'm not going to wear my Everest parka in 30 degrees in the Sahara. But I do like functional jackets that can be kind of worn in any environment, which is one of the reasons why I bought Buffalo, which I'm sure we'll come on to shortly.
We will get there. Yeah, because so you went South America, you went to Scotland, and that gave you the traveling and exploring bug, and you'd then experienced the moistness and chill of Scotland. Where did you head from there? What happened?
Well, I came back from that year-long experiment and was offered a job by the BBC to present a number of shows, Countryfile, Animal Park, and I became a TV presenter. So for about 10 years, I did all sorts of daytime shows, some memorable, some forgettable. And then eventually that sort of morphed into bigger adventures. I had been looking for something that would really challenge me and take me out of my comfort zone. And I had signed up to row across the Atlantic Ocean and was looking for a rowing partner. And I met James Cracknell, a former Olympic rower. He'd got 2 golds. I recognised he was a very good rower. So I
Good
managed
choice
to
of
persuade
partners by the
him.
sound of it, yeah.
Yeah, very, very good. And we ended up rowing the Atlantic Ocean. Not many clothes there. Most of it was done naked. And that row across the Atlantic led to a number of other kind of big expeditions, from crossing the Empty Quarter, crossing Antarctica, climbing Mount Everest, and I kind of I spent about 10 years taking on some challenges that I had dreamed of from kind of my early years, and they were really transformative when it came to me individually, but understanding kit. I would. There's not many things I think I'm good at, but when it comes to expedition kit, outdoor wear, it really gave me a great understanding about what is fit for which environment.
So is it twice you've been to Antarctica?
I've actually been 3 times. So once was a race with James Cracknell and our friend Dr. Ed Coates, and we pulled sledges 1,000 kilometers to the South Pole. Second time was to make a story about the secrets of Scott's Hut. So I went to Scott's Hut, Shackleton's Hut, which are still preserved with all their original outdoor wear, all their jumpers. There's a beautiful book, by the way, called Still Life, that I'm sure many of your listeners would be fascinated to look at. It's absolutely beautiful. It was photographs from inside those huts that are literally frozen in time, and I made a film about the preservation of all that of all that equipment. There are kind of archivists and conservators who are literally saving cans of baked beans. It's absolutely spectacular. And then the third time was with my friend Dwayne Fields, and we did a reenactment wearing the original kit that Scott and Amundsen had worn in their attempts at getting to the South Pole. So wool jackets, gabardine tops, and eating the same food that they ate, wooden skis. I've got them somewhere in here. I need to look around and see where they are. Anyway, the wooden skis, beautifully made for our expedition, are somewhere in my den in here, and that was the third time.
Yeah, because that's the green jacket behind me. That is Caborn's green version of the jacket you wore on that show.
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
was the Henry Bower jacket from Scott's
yes,
expedition.
yeah.
Now, I'm curious because you must have done, well, the last one was using traditional equipment from, well, 120 years ago, because they set off in 1902, was it?
Well, there's a number of different expeditions, but yes, essentially it was over a 10-year period.
But the first time you went, you were using modern gear.
Mm,
What sort of differences did you experience in that? Because I think I was watching the show TV program where you use the old-fashioned gear, and it seemed like it
mm,
actually worked pretty well.
yeah. I mean, what I've discovered over the years, a lot of people are kind of surprised at what I wear in extreme environments now, because I love wearing Ventile. I love wearing wool, merino wool, boiled wool, oiled wool. All of those fabrics for me work incredibly well. In fact, Nigel Caborn and I have become great friends, and I have worn a lot of his outdoor wear in some of the toughest environments. So actually, the Caborn that you have, I think that is
That's
the
Everest, yeah.
Everest. I have worn that right up to Camp 2 on Everest. I wore it in Antarctica. In fact, that whole trip at Scott's Hut, I wore his jacket, and it was better than the Canada Goose jackets that most of the people working at the Scott base were wearing. I had the number of times people offered to swap jackets.
Wow.
Huge sort of £2,000 Canada Goose full expedition jackets they were offering in exchange for my Caborn. But as we know, a Caborn is not going anywhere when you have one. It's it's honestly one of my favourite pieces. But the point of this, Nick, is that I really rate all those natural, organic, original fabrics and textiles when it comes to extreme environments, and it's pretty obvious why, because it works for the animals that wear those products naturally. So why would it not work for us? And when it comes to smell, when it comes to controlling your body temperature, for me, wool in particular, but also Ventile, I just think are a great all-round fabrics for extreme environments.
So when you were using the modern gear in Antarctica, I mean, it probably works perfectly satisfactory as well.
Yeah, I'd say, of course, there's some amazing stuff. There's an incredible company called PhD that's based in Manchester, and PhD are kind of the most iconic outdoor brand you've never heard of, because they pretty much only make for people going up Everest or going to Antarctica. It's almost like bespoke, made for individuals. You can find it online.
Yeah.
Not cheap. It's not particularly beautiful, but it's unbelievably brilliant. They do the sleeping bags, they do the down jackets, summit suits. So when I went up Everest, they made my summit suit, and it's a genius design, because a summit suit is an all-in-one. You zip it up the front, trousers, top, all combined. But obviously, you get incredibly hot when you're climbing Everest, particularly up at high altitude. With the sun radiation, it can be unbelievably warm. So they actually have a two-piece where you have an outer one, all-in-one, and an inner all-in-one. And they're kind of totally, you can take it off, take bits off, and it was made for me. And when they fill it with the down, they will fill specific parts of the jacket and trousers according to where you get cold. So if you get a cold bum, they will fill more there. If you get, if you're particularly cold around the elbows, which some people do, they'll do it there. So for me, that is the most kind of, that's the most useful way of making kit that's really fit for purpose, when you're really thinking about how it works for you. Because, for some people, if you get really, really cold, then one of those extreme, massive, great winter Canada Goose jackets is going to be great. And I know I keep going on about Canada Goose. It's just an interesting one, because for most people that work in extreme environments, that is the jacket of choice for camera operators, people who are standing around. But if you start moving, there's a reason it's got the braces, so you can take it off and hold it over your shoulders, because you just get so hot in it. So for me, I find those natural fabrics a better way to regulate my body temperature. When I did it in all the modern kit, this is the South Pole, I was either really cold or really hot. It was very, very hard to find a balance. And in fact, we were doing a race, so for most of that race, I was just in a pair of merino wool leggings and a merino wool top. Minus 40 degrees, but that's all I needed, just to keep the wind off the skin. But in minus 40, that was perfect, believe it or not.
Wow.
Nothing else.
I was going to mention that there is one more thing that PhD make, which you might not be aware of. The Caborn Everest parka is also made by them.
Yes, no, do you know what? They actually make, they Eddie Bauer, I think, they do some of their stuff. They actually make a lot of some of the really iconic jackets that I'm sure many of your listeners will be aware of.
It's kind of heartwarming and interesting to know that there are still these small little British companies that are
Oh,
not
and if you go there, it's
not
amazing. It's
tooting their
absolutely
horn in
amazing.
any way. They're just
Pick up PhD for sure.
yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned the Canada Gooses were just too hot, because I think when you're outside and it's cold, I mean, you can actually have gear that is too good for, it can be too hot. I remember someone asking me my advice about the Everest Parker and whether it would be good for standing outside the pub having a smoke in. And I was thinking, it might be going a bit over the top there.
It's a very, I mean, I've as we've been discussing, I've actually got two Everest Parkers, and I don't think I've ever worn them in this country. But I spent a lot of time in Scandinavia. Finse is one of my favourite places to go. I took my son earlier this year. It's halfway between Oslo and
Yeah,
Bergen, and
where the Star Wars
kind of
film was
where
recorded.
a lot of exactly, it's where a lot of the expeditions to the South Pole, old and new, all use it as a training ground. And I used that jacket there. My son wore it this year, which was great fun to see. And it's just incredible in those conditions. It really is.
So we've established that you have a huge collection of good stuff, and that the longshoreman smock is one of your favourite pieces. If you're going to mention a few more of your Fogle favourites, what would they be?
I think, let's just have a quick look. Well, actually, we've got this one here is quite special. So this is. Can you tell what that one is?
It looks like a World War II special operations smock.
Gosh, Nick, you know your stuff. Yeah, it's. I mean, by the way, I'm not vastly knowledgeable about all of this. Just for some of your listeners who go, Ben's got it wrong about certain things. I'm just a really keen lover of fine stuff. And yes, this is a Labrador, and I think it was originally made for the Marines, World War II. And you can see the patina on that, just absolutely extraordinary. And when for me, when you talk about timeless, I think that is a timeless jacket. And I've worn this on camera, by the way.
Right.
This is not. I suppose it's a bit like people who collect old cars. Some people keep them in a garage in pristine condition. Other people actually take them out on the road and drive them.
Yeah.
So I've worn this. It's not. It doesn't do a huge amount when it comes to keeping moisture and wind off you. But I love the look of it, and there are certain environments that I wore this up in Scotland on a kind of middling weather day. I took this to Iceland actually in the summer, and the number of comments that I have from people is just extraordinary. And again, for me, if you're trying to understand the type of outdoor wear that really motivates me, that gets me really excited, this is the kind of stuff. I love the history. I love thinking about who may have worn this, who may have originally designed it, the fact that this would have been cutting edge technology all those years ago, and the fact that there are still people out there like us who still value and appreciate these beautiful old garments. So this is definitely a kind of favourite of mine. And what I tend to do in my office space, this is my kind of slightly wild office, which goes on quite a bit. You're getting a little window. I kind of rotate the jackets that I like to kind of look at, and I like to look at them just to enjoy the aesthetic of them, because I think the jackets I wear, none of them are just here to be looked at. They're all worn actually out in the field, but I quite enjoy. I enjoy the aesthetic when I'm thinking and planning and kind of trying to be creative. I like using other people's designs to motivate me.
It's interesting because I have suggested to my wife that I'd like to have some jackets sort of displayed in our living room. But she didn't go for the idea at all. I mean, I was thinking they're quite arty, but clearly you've sort of got your own gallery.
I'm with you, Nick. I think jackets are definitely an art form. What you don't have is smell-o-vision, and in here there's a mix of oils and well, all sorts of flavors. I love the smell. My wife isn't so keen, which is why my kind of little office space is kind of hidden away from the rest of the house, and I can kind of go wild and just indulge in my passion.
I think there are a few things that smell as bad as a really rotten old Barbour. I had one once. It came to me. It was promised to be in good condition. It was packed, taped up in a bin bag, and I opened it inside, and I just had to run outside with it. It was that bad, and I couldn't imagine having it sort of hanging inside.
Yeah, as well. I've got we have one here which is actually quite smelly, but again another old favourite of mine. Oh, the smell of that. You see, I quite like this. I'm really enjoying the smell of that.
That is an old one.
Look at the old label they used to do.
60s or is it 50s?
I don't think anyone really does. Yeah, I believe it's kind of 60s. I don't think anyone really does labels quite as well as they used to do. But this is pretty ripe, this one. But I quite like that. It's a good ripe.
No one would really sort of relate to how bizarre this is. Two men talking about their ripe jackets.
It proves it's been worn, Nick. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I think a lot of these old Barbours, they come from pig farmers probably who have used them to have their pigs sleeping on or something, because some of them are just that bad. And I mean, that one which I had, which was so bad, I did end up washing it pretty harshly, but then I realized that it was actually rotting apart. The cotton was degrading. So the
Wow.
patina was wonderful, brilliant. Good Lord, it
Yeah.
looked so good. But it was actually literally falling apart. So anything else on the...
What else have we got in here? I have got, just trying to see what I've actually got out right now. I think that's that's the main jackets that I've got in the room. Well, actually, here's another iconic jacket.
Was that Bellstaff, is it? Yeah,
Yeah,
Trailmaster
that's the Trailmaster, exactly.
in red, which is unusual.
This is, I know red. It's not really my color. I prefer kind of natural muted tones. But there was something about this. I got this from my mate Jojo at Rag Parade up in Sheffield a few years
He
ago.
does tend to turn up good stuff.
Yeah, and I love this jacket. Again, I think this is when Bellstaff were making really good stuff. And again, I mean, I think like all of us, we tend to go for the same sort of style or colors when it comes to what we like, but I do like a splash of color every now and then. So the Bellstaff there gives me the opportunity to just have a little bit of color in my life, because a lot of the other jackets are slightly muted tones. I mean, listen, the Caborn jacket, of course, is that iconic orange. A lot of people, when they're in the outdoors, favor really bright colors because it allows you to stand out and can be a kind of safety feature. For me, I've always liked this idea that you blend in to your environment. I've always wanted to have a more sympathetic relationship with the outdoor world, and I think it's one of the reasons why wax jackets just seem to work so effortlessly, particularly when you're in the British Isles, because you sort of blend into the background. Whenever I'm filming, the camera operators hate me because I tend to dress almost like my environment. Sometimes it's done subconsciously when I'm packing my bag and I'm choosing which jacket. I suddenly end up and I've chosen a sand-coloured jacket for the Sahara, and I've chosen a green jacket for the jungle, and I've chosen a brown jacket for lowland mountains. But I do like to kind of be slightly sympathetic when it comes to the environments that I'm in.
I think the wax jackets are really kind of having a comeback now. You've got the new dry wax fabrics, which are much less smelly and quite different to the old sort of wet waxed ones. But then you've also got the case for the synthetic fabrics now, where the fluorocarbon water repellents they've been using, which have been a very cheap and simple way of adding repellency, are now being phased out because they're pretty nasty stuff. So I think the sort of waxed scene is coming back again.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're probably right. I think heritage, full stop, when it comes to outdoor wear, is very much in vogue right now. If you look at a lot of the brands like Paramo, which is again very popular with camera crews, with people who spend a lot of time in the outdoors. They've got a lot of sort of heritage colours and fabrics and the designs. And I think a lot of the bigger brands are latching onto that. And over the years, I've noticed a few of those big brands looking at bringing back some of their old heritage labels, some of the old heritage colours, bringing back, Patagonia have done it very well for many, many years. And I think there is a kind of an overall trend to go very much back to some of those heritage designs.
I hope it's a long-lasting trend and not just a fashion thing, because I mean, even that side of the industry, garment industry, selling to men who like proper stuff and so forth, is you do see the fashion side of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why you have Jojo in Sheffield. He has people, designers from all the fashion houses coming by and riffling through his racks looking for sweet inspiration among the smelly old jackets.
Yeah, and I think that's testament to, the quality of those early designs. The fact that so many of us still covet those, and the fact that designers are still sort of utilizing those in their designs.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the inspired by are very close up to the originals. I do wonder when someone sees Steve McQueen in his Bellstaff Trailmaster,
Mm.
and they think, "Wow, that's such a great style." Is that because it's Steve McQueen, or is it because it was such a great design?
Yeah, I think it's probably a combination, isn't it? I think. Sorry, my dog has just joined me. Swifty. I think it's a combination of both. I think that's where something becomes truly iconic, when you have that beautiful collision between a style icon and an incredible garment. And yes, I think each can elevate. I think each have the power to elevate it. Um, yes, would it have become such an iconic jacket had it been worn by, I don't know, Charlie Chaplin? I don't know.
Someone who isn't as immediately seductive of, yeah. That is a thing. I mean, I think you do wonders for sales of shorts.
Yeah, which are very hard. By the way, that it's a very hard thing to find the perfect pair of shorts. It's why I hold on to all the old pairs with my life, because it's most brands make shorts just too long. In my personal sense, a lot of shorts look like they're just very short trousers.
Okay.
They literally go down to the calf. So for me, I have always preferred shorts that are above the knee, and to find shorts, in fact most of them I've just had to get cut a little bit shorter because they are just so long and I find them uncomfortable. I don't like the look of it. But yes, I'm often asked whether I'll ever come up with my own range of shorts. I would like to. I think it's probably quite niche. I'm
Possibly.
not sure if there's a great market in it, but maybe one
But
day.
what does make the perfect Fogle shorts, apart from length?
Well, I've got quite large thighs. I'm giving you away far too much information now, but shorts are either way too baggy or way too tight. In fact, the kind of this modern trend for skin tight jeans and trousers, I just find impossible, because they literally sucker to my skin. And it's, I'm 51 now. I don't think that's, and no one really wants to see skin tight shorts on me. So it's finding ones that are kind of wide enough, but also short enough. I definitely favour the sort of the late Steve Irwin, Australian, South African, posty type of shorts. Not really short, not sort of Speedos short, but I definitely prefer a shorter short. And I think it's all about the length. I've decided 6 inches.
Okay.
If you want to know, probably or 6.5 maybe.
Interesting
But
pick.
most shorts are like 9, 12 inches long, and it's really quite long. But some people, it's down to individual taste.
And pocket wise,
Just two very simple pockets. I mean, I do like cargo shorts. They can start looking really big and baggy if they've got too many pockets on. They can be quite unflattering. Television tends to make everything look much bigger and bulkier. So I think just inadvertently, subliminally, I've kind of tried to tailor down the things that I've worn to be a much tighter, neater cut, which is probably why I like the classic cuts. Not too busy, not too complicated. Those classic fine lines, I think, work best when it comes to how it looks on camera.
okay. Now, we initially made contact through the Mountain Style book that Max and Henry did half a year ago now, I think.
Yep.
And they cover another one of the little English industries that have quietly been beavering away for 4 decades, 5 decades now, making British outerwear. And then you went and bought it.
Yeah.
What's
I
that
know.
all about?
So the buffalo. So let me just get one down so that anyone who isn't sure what a buffalo is can see a buffalo. So ever since I was a child, this has been my go-to jacket. This one's about 30 years old. And it was actually an old school teacher that I had that wore a buffalo. He was an ex-Met police. And basically, if you were a Met policeman or in the army in the probably 80s, this is what you would have worn. So it's the first time I saw a buffalo, and I've worn them ever since. I've told you that I have a lot of jackets, as we know, but if there's one jacket that kind of has absolute cross functionality for every environment, wind, rain, cold, heat, long journeys, it's a buffalo, all in one. Not particularly 2025, where most people want a thin base layer and then a mid layer and then an outer layer. This is everything in one. And the common thing everyone thinks is, do you not boil in it? Do you not get really, really hot? I run really, really hot. I've told you already that when I was in Antarctica, a lot of those big modern jackets were just way too much for me. But the beauty of them is they've got these amazing zips on the side. They're smocks, so you pull them over your head, but they've got amazing venting systems and always have. So I've worn buffalo all my life, and about a year and a half ago, on a whim, they were quite difficult to get hold of, by the way. They didn't have a website where you could buy them, only available up in the north, like almost trying not to sell jackets.
There's a
I
few
went up
companies
to
like that.
Sheffield. Yeah, I went up to Sheffield to try and buy a jacket, so I had to go to the factory. And while I was there, I don't know how I said it, but I mentioned to the owners, if they were ever thinking of selling, please let me know. And all went quiet for a little bit, and then I got a call saying, listen, we are thinking, what do you think? And I was like, oh my goodness. Well, I did offer. So I ended up buying it with my new business partner, James Sleater. He is a Savile Row tailor. He's got a brand called the Cad and the Dandy. He recently bought Norton & Co., an old heritage brand from Savile Row. And the reason James and I got together is because I've bought suits from him for a number of years now. He was the only person I knew in the kind of the garment textile industry. And I called him up and said, have you ever heard of buffalo? And he instantly got his phone out with a photo of him skiing in a buffalo top and buffalo trousers, which I thought was really punchy. And he was like, I love buffalo. And I was like, are you coming in with me? And he was like, yep. So we ended up completing about 6 months ago, and I now very proudly own buffalo. And it's sort of an unexpected adventure. You know, I've talked about climbing Everest and going to the South Pole, which is my natural kind of comfort zone. A business owner of a brand that's been going since 1979 with a lot of staff, still made in Britain, is a huge, huge challenge, but one that I'm super excited to be taking on.
Was it a very awkward moment when they called you back and you realised that they'd misheard that you wanted to buy a jacket and they heard factory and you had to sort of...
Listen, it was just a firm reality check when I suddenly realised they were offering me the whole business to buy, and you know the reality of taking on a British-made business, because the deal was, if they were going to sell to James and myself, we had to keep it made in Sheffield. The hero products, the main business has to still be made there. And that was something that I was willing to take on. And as you'll know, Nick, it's to make and manufacture here in Britain is a really, really tough thing to do, especially with the competition of other outdoor brands. We realized early on that it was going to be a huge, huge challenge to turn a business that's sort of been treading water, you know, to be respectful to the business. What we saw was just the opportunity to elevate what has been, sort of just staying on the waterline for the last 30 years or so, but with its own challenges.
So how big a business is it? I mean, how many employees are there?
We have about 25 staff, a small factory in the heart of Sheffield. The jackets have been made there, same location for the best part of 40 years or so, a bit longer, in fact, 45 years. And it's a small business that have had some very big contracts. You know, they supplied the special forces, we've supplied the Met Police, we've supplied all sorts of British Antarctic Survey. We've supplied a lot of people over the years, but contracts come and go. And I think our ambition is to keep that sort of that heritage, keep that feel, keep that kind of small club-like thing. The way I describe a buffalo is it's a bit like an old Land Rover Defender. Not the new ones. If you drive an old Land Rover Defender and you see someone else in one, you on the steering wheel you'll do the little thumbs up to acknowledge
A
them.
fellow
The
sufferer.
same goes for the same goes for a buffalo. If you see someone wearing a buffalo, I stop and go, "Great jacket! Why are you wearing a buffalo?" That's actually the question I usually ask, because you kind of have to know it. It's not a jacket you're naturally going to go to. Debatably stylish. I like the look of it. Some people think it's not a particularly attractive looking garment. I actually love the simplicity of it. I think it's iconic. It was certainly iconic enough to make it into that mountain book
Yeah.
as one of the most kind of iconic outdoor brands that we have in this country. And I think that's what James, my business partner, and I kind of want to do with the brand. We want to go forward. So we want to bring back some of these beautiful heritage labels. So that's, look at that.
Big old buffalo,
We
yeah.
don't use these right now. It's actually got the buffalo logo on. I'll see if I've got one here. I think I've got lots of buffaloes actually in here. Loads of buffaloes. So that's kind of one. That's actually not the new one, but the one that's used right now has the name. But I am a much bigger fan of, this is another older one here, kind of purpley
Proper stylized
colour.
buffalo, yeah.
Yeah, I really like those logos. But these are ones that I've worn on Everest, in Antarctica. These don't have any of the branding on, but still made in Sheffield. This jacket this one I've probably had for the best part of 10 years, and it has been everywhere, absolutely everywhere, and it's like a comfort blanket to me. So I just feel super excited that we have this amazing opportunity to kind of share our vision and our knowledge, and to hopefully be able to elevate the brand and take it to more people.
Do you have plans to develop new products?
Yeah, we do. We've got quite a small line right now. We don't make a huge number of products. We make sleeping bags, we make mitts, but we do want to evolve for sure. And I think, we've started already doing T-shirts and caps, so some kind of merchandise. But what we'd really like to do is to really evolve the actual products that we are designing and making in Sheffield. So I certainly have some ideas of evolving other jackets. We want to keep what's called the mountain shirt and the Special 6 that have been our kind of top sellers for many, many years. But we have plans to start designing some alternative jackets so that we don't kind of disrupt the loyal fan base that we already have. We want to remain respectful, change the colors. We've already brought in a couple of new colors. They haven't made a huge number of different colors over the years. One of the complaints is that there just isn't that opportunity. But for example, we're going to start dropping a couple of tiny collections. In fact, I think in the next few days we're dropping our first small collector's edition, just 10 jackets in a new sand color. They look amazing. They're the special the mountain shirt in a sand color, and they are absolutely beautiful. But we're only going to release 10 of them. And I think what we're going to be really agile with is the fact that we make all our product here in Britain, in Sheffield, so we can be super dynamic and agile, and we can actually just do things like that on a whim. We can find a new fabric and we can make them within days. And there's something really beautiful about being able to do that, and really exciting. And I'm really looking forward to some of these kind of micro drops.
Now, when I was reading the Mountain Style book, it was very clear to me that the British outerwear industry had really adopted the synthetic fabrics as they evolved. And Buffalo, the guy behind it, Hamish Hamilton, was it?
Hamish
He came up with the Pertex, which was a a synthetic weave, which I think is still what you're using today.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. So what you're pointing out now, Nick, is I've just been waxing lyrical about natural fibers, and I've bought a brand that uses
I
synthetics.
didn't want
Listen,
to say
it's not
it.
lost. It's not lost on me on a number of different levels. Environmentally, but I've got a number of thoughts. So Pertex is an extraordinary man-made fiber that we still use today. He invented Pertex. It was actually sold to another company. So we no longer, as Buffalo, make the Pertex. We buy the Pertex in. And the pile liner. So it's all synthetic fibers. So the two things I'd say on that is when it comes to environmentalism, my form of environmentalism is products that will last a very long time. So, one of these jackets will last 30 years. I know I have more than one, so I'm aware of the hypocrisy in that. But as long as you have a jacket that really will last for a long time, there's a great resale value in the jackets. If you go online, you can buy there's a lot of buffaloes available online, some for quite large sums of money when they're in the unique colorways, but they retain a value. And when it comes to the fabrics that we're using, I would certainly love, as we move on, to start exploring Ventile. I'd love to start exploring, some wool as the pile liners, but all of this comes at a cost. Those fabrics cost more. We're manufacturing here in the UK. A lot of people are already complaining that our price point is too high, but that's the reality. I believe that to buy British is something that, if you can do, is something quite patriotic. I think supporting British manufacturing full stop is something that we should be trying to do if we have the economic wherewithal to be able to do that. So for me to pay a slight premium for a product made in the UK is something that I'm certainly willing to do, and certainly moving forward, I'm really excited about exploring some other fabrics and seeing whether we can do that.
I think you'll find that whatever price you're charging, there will always be people complaining about the price. But I think if you make a good enough product, you also find that there are people willing to pay the price you have to charge for that. So if you make a Ventile mountain shirt with a wool lining, put it out at £900 or whatever it needs to cost, there will be people wanting that because it's just such a great product.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that we can be super creative moving forward. Nick, just really quickly, I've just looked. My phone is starting to run out of power, so I apologise if it pings out. I don't have a charger here, but I'll try and sort something and speak to you again.
Okay, I was going to mention that you're not the only sibling, Fogle's sibling in the clothes industry, are you?
No, my sister and her partner, Neil Starr, have a brand called North Sea Clothing, which I'm sure you know
I
of.
do, yeah.
They make beautiful knitwear, beautiful shoes, and they make really nice stuff. In fact, I took one of their sweaters with me to Antarctica when I redid that Scott Shackleton journey with Dwayne Fields, and I have quite a lot of their jackets. I think they're really
I
beautiful.
did wonder if it was one of theirs you were wearing, you see. I was watching it
Yeah.
yesterday, doing a bit of research.
Yes, we had. I tell you, we had what jacket did we have? We had an Arthur Beale. Arthur Beale made the original ones, I believe, for either Amundsen or for Scott. We had some Devold jackets, which is a
Norwegian,
Norwegian brand, very beautiful, and then we had some North Sea clothing company ones. So I think we used different ones according to the expedition that we were telling, whether it was the Amundsen or the Scott.
The North Sea 1952 trousers are among the best trousers I find. It's so well made.
Yeah,
Incredible. Incredible.
I shall tell them that you're a fan.
They know. Do you spend much time in sleeping bags? Now, I did watch the program where you're in the reindeer skin, which has obviously been poorly tanned. I remember this shedding reindeer skins from my childhood because we'd always
Yeah,
have them when we were going skiing, and the ones that were poorly tanned would release hair like crazy.
I'm going to get a charger while you're keep chatting.
So I'm wondering, how do you best stay warm in a sleeping bag?
Well, the key is to have a good sleeping bag. Let me just, I think I've got a charger here. I'm just going to try and plug this in. One of the trials of constantly traveling. Okay, there we go. Let me just plug you in for a second. Hopefully you're not going to go anywhere.
Still here?
Yep.
That's a nice bookshelf you've got there.
Yes, you're being nosy at seeing.
Being very nosy.
Sorry, fell over. Okay, right. Let me just move this over here. So I just found one actually. Yeah, thanks. Okay,
There we
go. Yeah, so when it comes to sleeping bags, gosh, I've tried a lot of different ones. PhD, without doubt, are the best sleeping bags when it comes to the extreme cold. So on Everest, Antarctica, I always use PhD. Buffalo makes sleeping bags. It was actually one of the first things that that they made, and I have used them in the past. I don't use them now. That it's a very specific environment that suits a buffalo sleeping bag. In my opinion, I think they're very good in damp conditions. Sailboats up in the Arctic when you're close to water, quite humid, because of their way of wicking kind of moisture away. And certainly we've had a lot of feedback from people who spend a lot of time on sailboats, ocean rowing boats, who have used in colder conditions, have used the buffalo bags and absolutely rate them. But yes, for me, I think a PhD sleeping bag is the best one. One of the things I've always been curious about is the best way that the body regulates temperature is through the feet. And most sleeping bags cocoon your feet in there. There's no escape for them. So I've always been surprised that more sleeping bag companies don't have some way of sticking feet out through a little hole so that you can actually regulate, because it's amazing. All you need to do is stick your feet out and you're sorted. So yes, if I was tweaking or adapting sleeping bags, I'd have a little kind of window that you can almost like a, I don't know, like I suppose a kangaroo papoose that you can just stick your legs out of, and you can actually regulate your
I
temperature.
was thinking of maybe having a couple of drawstrings up at the arm end where you could sort of open a little thing.
Yeah.
So what would you wear inside the sleeping bag?
Oh, nothing. I think it takes away the whole point of a sleeping bag if you have anything on. It's very difficult when you're in really cold conditions. It's very difficult to kind of undress. And yes, usually you end up in your thermal leggings and thermal top, but I try to take them off. For me, the more you wear in your sleeping bag, the less efficient the sleeping bag is. The sleeping bag works best as if you're wearing it as a jacket without anything on, and it then means when you get up in the morning you have more layers to put on so that you can kind of you can actually feel warm after getting out of your warm sleeping bag. There is nothing worse than getting out into your tent when it's -40 and there's all sorts of condensation that's frozen on the roof of the tent that all snows down on you, and you're trying to get warm when you get out of a really lovely warm sleeping bag. So for me, in a sleeping bag, less is more.
Right. Yeah, I'm very glad to hear this validates a lot of my experience with sleeping bags. When I was in the army in Norway, it was -30 and people were having their uniforms on inside the sleeping bags, and no one was able to sleep at
I
all.
understand why people do it, but it's not what you're supposed to do. It's a bit like a buffalo. A buffalo is actually supposed to be worn against bare skin. And if not bare skin, then a thin merino layer, but that's it. So actually, if you really want to get the most out of it, that is how you would wear it. But we all use things in different ways and not necessarily how it was specifically designed.
Yeah. Back to the Scots expedition. You mentioned in the program that the original gear was made by Burberry, among others. I was very interested in. Do you have any idea who made the modern replicas of it?
We actually had some set designers, some costume designers from film, and it was a couple of individuals who did it for us. We didn't go for a big company. Our budgets didn't quite stretch. I would have loved to get. I hoped Nigel Caborn might have been able to help. He was a bit busy, kind of changing the world with his fashion and being a fashion king. So sadly, that didn't work. But no, we actually got some university professors, experts in their field, who do it specifically for film, and it was all made kind of and fitted carefully for Dwayne and myself. And sadly I don't have it easily accessible now, but I've got it all. Yeah, it tells its own tale.
It did look very proper, and it looked like it worked well.
It worked incredibly well. You know, we were up on the plateau in -50 wearing just those wool jumpers and the gabardine top, and they were just amazing. Huge mitts. We actually borrowed some other people's mitts that had some that had been used on another expedition, and again they were amazing.
It did look like you were wearing modern boots.
The boots were they were kind of hobnail boots, but they were modern. They were
Right.
let me just think of the brand. It's a brand we all know. It's Guernseys. They were Guernseys, believe it or not.
Oh,
And so they were modern. There were certain limits to how far Channel 5 were willing to push us, and losing our feet to frostbite was not one of those. They were still. They were. Oh no, sorry. I'm guessing. Do you know what, Nick? I'm getting completely confused. We did a reenactment in Africa, chasing the course of the Nile, and we wore Guernseys for that. In Antarctica, we wore a pair of Norwegian. They were modern boots, a Norwegian pair. They were still leather boots, and they were a company, the name of which escapes me, but I'll try and get it back. And if I don't, I'll drop you a line so you can put it on your page.
now that you've done the Antarctica like Scott, has there been talk about doing Everest like Mallory?
Mm-hmm. I would love to do that, and in fact, we've been exploring the possibility. There was a great film called Wildest Dream with Comrade Anker and Leo Holding, where they did it, and the kit looks absolutely incredible. So it kind of has been done, which is kind of a difficult one to kind of follow on, especially when it's two great mountaineers like that. But certainly Dwayne and I have been exploring the possibility of telling the story of Mallory and Irvin and the original kit that they did. But naturally, just to get to Nepal, particularly now with the geopolitical situation there, but also the cost and the licenses, it's a very, very difficult, expensive place to get to. But we would love to try, so watch this space.
You're probably the only person I know who has actually been there. I mean, was it as bad there as you get the impression of? I mean, talking about rubbish, bodies, people.
I actually disagree a little bit. I think, you know, there's about 1,000 people who head to base camp every year, and naturally, you know, there's a lot of human waste. Naturally, there's some rubbish that is created. I think they've really cleaned up their image. When you go to Everest now, you have to take back a certain amount of litter from the mountain per team. And yes, of course, there are, you know, there's the very sad situation that some of the people who've perished on the mountain, their bodies remain. It's too expensive, too difficult, too dangerous to repatriate the bodies, so they do remain there. But it's not quite as awful as a lot of people would make out. There are locations where there's more litter. Camp 4, which is pretty high, it's about 8,000 meters, there's a lot of stripped tents, there's a lot of old bottles, there's a lot of stuff there. But you must remember, it's all there for a reason. It's because the people have not come back, because they've lost their lives. So it's kind of part of the storytelling. The way I describe it to people is, in some ways, it's the equivalent of the Scott's hut that remains in Antarctica. You could look at that as just a litter-strewn building. Gosh, weren't they awful? They left their whole building behind with all their jumpers and sweaters and photographic materials and cans of baked beans. Now that's one way of looking at it, that it's an eyesore in Antarctica, or you could see it as a living museum, that reminds us of another era. And the same could be said for Camp 4. The strip tents, the poles, the bottles are all the story of mankind's relationship with Everest, both good and bad. By the way, I'm not condoning all the litter in any shape or form, but I'm just saying how you see it and how you interpret it is not quite as clear cut as people say.
So it's a bit different to Glastonbury after the festival has ended.
I can tell you, we should be far more ashamed of the number of tents and equipment that's all left behind after concerts and festivals we have in this country. And if you compare it to a mountain like Kilimanjaro in Africa, I can tell you there's a lot more litter and a lot more rubbish and a lot more problems there.
Wow. So to start summing up, what's next for Ben?
Well,
what are you up to now?
Well, buffalo is going to be a big part of what I'm doing. We're making a documentary called Made in Sheffield, following the trials and tribulations of trying to keep the business and elevate the business. So that's kind of ongoing. And then I've got a number of other TV travel shows that I'm doing. I've got a new series that I've been filming all year in China, and that will be on in about a month's time. And then my series New Lives in the Wild kind of carries on, and that will be on in the new year.
Right. Are you coming to Norway at all?
Am I what?
Coming to Norway at all?
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to be in Norway in February, back in Finser actually. I'm going to be there with my friend Pola Preet and my son. There's a little explorers gathering. So yes, I will be there in February.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Nick, for allowing me to indulge in my passion of outdoor wear.
Guys can talk for hours and hours about old jackets and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Ben. So, thanks a lot, and bye-bye for now.
Thank you so much.